Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher, talk you through 3 Game 5s, 3 closeout games for the favorites. The number 2 seed Boston Celtics, number 1 seed Denver Nuggets, and number 4 seed Phoenix Suns. If these series all close out tonight, 2 things. We won't have basketball on Thursday, and we'll have 2 playoff matchups set for the next round. You would have in this case, Denver and Phoenix, and Boston and Philly set. Those series, my guess, would start Saturday, but we haven't seen any official word on that. But with me to break it down, as always, Mike Gallagher. Mike, how are you?
Doing great, yeah. Kind of weird schedule, right? 3 today, 4 tomorrow for sure. Maybe 0 on Thursday, maybe 4 again, maybe 0. We'll see. So very, very odd schedule, but yeah, a lot of basketball right now. Tomorrow is going to be a really big day. Not too much news. A lot of news tomorrow with De'Aaron and stuff, but some news today too with Slow-Mo, DeJounte suspension, and the Clippers are going to Clippers. So really, every game has something that could have some edge and some new rotations.
Yeah, well, let's get into it. Let's go game by game. We'll start with Atlanta and Boston. You mentioned the DeJounte Murray suspension. That's the only thing really on the injury report for either of these two teams. So no DeJounte Murray tonight. In the past, we've seen this result in a bigger role for Bogdan Bogdanovic. What are your thoughts on how Atlanta copes tonight in an elimination game? How deep do they get into the rotation? These are a lot of minutes to fill. With a guy who's largely been their most effective, consistent offensive performer through the series, Trey's picked it up the last 2 games. But how does Atlanta cope without the presence of DeJounte Murray tonight?
Yeah, so there's 2 guys who are considered to be the starter. The first one is probably by a lot, and it's Bogdan Bogdanovic. Everyone, including me, I'm sure you, and most people are expecting him to start. And I would expect him to for sure start in the vast majority of matchups. However, Boston presents some really unique challenges on the other end, and DeJounte's replacements are not good. I mean, we've seen them go to Forrest. We've seen them go to Aaron Holiday at times. Filling that defensive on-ball role and guarding Jaylen Brown is really, really tough, which Quinn Snyder had suggested that they may start big, which would mean probably Saddiq Bey would get the start if they did really lean into, okay, let's try to slow down these wings with some size. We know Bogdan can't really defend very well. But again, I'm still expecting Bogdan to start and draw a pretty big role. The question is, does he get all the secondary ball handling if Trey's on the bench? Do they bring in Aaron Holiday, who I think would be ahead in this spot here? I think they don't really want to go to AJ Griffin here in this spot. They trust Jalen Johnson, second-year guy. Maybe he benefits a little bit. So expecting Bogdan to benefit, Saddiq Bey to benefit. Trey might play a lot here. As you mentioned, playing a little bit better. The ball handling stuff's back. He's driving a lot. The last couple games, he's really turned up his drives. John Collins also benefits a little bit here, right? You got Saddiq Bey needing to fill wing minutes. Therefore, he can't fill the power forward minutes quite as much. Certainly could just really run up Bey and still cut Collins down, but the floor is a little bit safer here. Don't think the centers are generally affected. But the question is, do they bring in AJ Griffin? Kind of don't think they do. I think they're okay with the 8 that they got besides him. And yeah, how many minutes can Bogdan play? This is potentially the last game of the year. Maybe they run him up real high. So yeah, potentially a lot of value losing. As you mentioned, DeJounte has been huge with shots, with roll, with minutes, with on-ball defense. So just a really, really tough replacement. That's been reflected in the spread, right? It's almost a 14-point spread here. So yeah, a whole lot going on there.
That's what I was going to say on John Collins is, with the lack of wing depth, guard depth, and if they try to, especially if you see Saddiq Bey in the starting lineup, I think that's a really good sign for John Collins in terms of his minutes, because then I think you might be getting into the situation that John Collins and Jalen Johnson are a full 48 at the power forward spot, and Clint Capella, Onyeka Okongwu are a full 48 at the center spot. And then at the small forward spot, DeAndre Hunter is going to eat up almost all of those. But then at the 2 spot, you'd have Bey, Bogdanovic, the leftover minutes at the 3, and then potentially even, Bogdanovic as the backup 1, and that could be essentially, what would that be? I guess that would be an 8-man rotation.
8, yeah.
That seems like the way that it's most likely going to go to me. I mean, maybe they bring in Aaron Holiday, maybe they bring in AJ Griffin, but it's an elimination game, and I think Holiday is is much more likely than AJ Griffin just because of the defensive stuff that you mentioned. But even so, like he's giving up a lot of size to Jaylen Brown. It's not like a guard dominant defensive situation like a Cavs. Like if they were playing the Cavs or something like that with Mitchell and Garland, I'd be like, yeah, I feel more confident that Aaron Holiday is going to get in this rotation. I think it's possible they just play a straight 8. And if that's the case, you're just going to see heavy minutes on pretty much those main 6, Collins, Hunter, Young, Murray, Bogdanovich, Bay, simply because the other, Capella and Okongwu are just going to chop up the minutes with whoever's playing better, essentially. So yeah, I think you could see really elevated minutes from the Hawks guys here.
Yeah, worth noting that there was one game against the Knicks when they were a little short, and they played the centers together. We're not projecting that; we can't. But and it's been used before, so I just wanted to note that.
Yeah, and something we saw in Game 4 was Boston turn more to the Horford and Time Lord sharing the floor at the same time. We saw Robert Williams' minutes tick up quite a bit in that game, and that would be a lineup that would facilitate that type of thing as well, as Boston was really looking to try to combat the rebounding struggles that they had in Game 3. So on the Boston side of things, do you expect there to be any notable rotation changes due to the adjustment of not having DeJounte Murray on the other end, or do you think things are pretty much as is for Boston in this series?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, maybe this helps Grant Williams or something like that, but definitely feel that Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, and the one big lineup. And Al Horford has been working great. I think keeping Robert Williams' minutes down a little bit overall has helped. That didn't really happen last game as he popped off, which we were waiting for, the Martingale. But yeah, I don't think that this is going to affect their rotation overall too much. It will affect, I think, how they maybe run their offense here, just because you're taking away one defender, and maybe that we've seen a lot of early offense from Derek White. So I talked about this in matchups that Derek White's matchup hasn't changed, but the other guys maybe getting softer matchups makes that matchup a little bit not as attractive by comparison. So that's probably the only takeaway for me on the Boston side of this.
We saw Grant Williams in Game 3, did not see him in Game 4 until the very end, or saw 1 minute of him. We saw 16 minutes of overlap between Horford and Robert Williams. Do you expect that kind of overlap potential again, or do you think that comes back down a little bit? Because that's way elevated above what we've seen earlier in the series.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a bit of a mix. I think that just Time Lord was just cruising, so that was just a natural way to boost him there. So probably not as much, but he's been freaking great.
Yep.
Not too much statistically to the last game, but he's been killing it around the basket. I think he's leading. He's like near the top in a lot of at rim statistics. And actually, the Celtics, despite all their shooting and being such a 3-point heavy team, they're leading the playoffs in at rim scoring per game. They've been just awesome, getting easy buckets around there.
All right, let's move to Denver and Minnesota. Nothing on the Denver injury report to note. So Nikola Jokic, remember 2 games ago, questionable with the sprained wrist issue. Last game probable. Today not listed on the injury report so far. So that's a good sign for Nikola Jokic and for the Nuggets from a health perspective. The Timberwolves, on the other hand, it's unfortunately the last month of the season, they've just lost key piece after key piece. It was Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid. Now it's Kyle Anderson, who's out with this game with a left eye injury. Jalen Noel still questionable with the left knee issues. He's been listed questionable and being able to play his limited minutes through these issues. Without Kyle Anderson, that's another big role in the front court where they're stacking up injuries upon each other in terms of Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels as well. So how does Minnesota cope with the loss of Kyle Anderson tonight?
Yeah, huge loss. They only really have 6 trusted players in this rotation. They'll be starting Nickeil Alexander-Walker again for sure. A lot of commentary from the coaching staff and other players talking about how important he was with defense on Murray. So definitely starting Conley, Nah, Ant, Towns, and Gobert. Taurean Prince is going to play a lot of minutes here. It's just he's so much more valuable than the Jordan McLaughlins. Austin Rivers is the world. We saw Austin Rivers pick up a pretty big role after someone went down. I think we're projecting Rivers to be basically the 7th man here, but not by a lot. We just got a lot of minutes on the other guys. Jordan McLaughlin's been too small in the series. Jalen Noel can't score. I think he has like the lowest true shooting among players with his minutes. Been just completely dreadful. Don't think they're going to go to Josh Minot or Wendell Moore Jr., but I wouldn't be surprised just to give a little bit more length. But yeah, I think that the headline here is these 6 players that they trust are going to play a lot and try to soak up, 95% of the minutes and just fill in, 15, 16, 17 minutes with those, Austin Rivers, Jordan McLaughlin's, Jalen Noel's of the world. So the Wolves are, if they could play well, the altitude again, I think that was an issue for them in game 1. We'll see if this is a little bit better here in game 5. But really, really tough spot to lose Kyle Anderson from a minutes perspective. From a kind of scheme standpoint, he touches the ball a lot. They run a lot of offense through him. So this is pretty good news for really everybody else. I would actually start with Cat maybe benefiting most, maybe clearing up the post a little bit better. I've been talking in our Slack that Cat is a 7-foot, 250-pound man who is ridiculously gifted offensively. He's 39th in at-rim possessions per game. That is just unfathomable. So Cat should benefit. I think Conley benefits a lot with the more pick and roll stuff, and obviously Ant's going to Ant. Really big minutes from him as well. So yeah, this is a big injury, man. Slimo's been a really impactful player. The minutes haven't been huge, but replacing his role, and even just mid-20s minutes when you're already so thin, really hurts.
Yeah, one other thing that I'll note: Kyle Anderson, a pretty normal usage type player, but as you alluded to, a normal, an above average ball handling role and generally rebound rate. There's a chance that a lot of these minutes. I think the guy that they're going to go to most heavily is Austin Rivers. And Austin Rivers is a really, really low usage rates player generally. So you are potentially now McLaughlin and Noel are higher rates players, but I really think Rivers, the veteran, he's played fine when he's been on the floor in the series. He can defend. They're willing to let him shoot spot up threes a little bit more than McLaughlin and Noel. I think there's a really good chance that he soaks up all those minutes, and that's a really low usage guy out there on the floor with, Cat, Anthony Edwards, Conley. So as you allude to, the ball is going to be in the hands of those guys a lot more, and I think there's also going to be just a corner stander on offense essentially. So I'd expect better rates for the Minnesota guys. I'd expect really heavy minutes here in an elimination game.
Oh, I lost you. Or I lost myself.
Hopefully someone can hear me out there.
You're back now.
Okay. So with Austin Rivers, I think there's a chance that he plays a ton in this game relative to the bench guys. And I'm talking 25 minutes or something like that. And he's just a really low rates player that opens up a lot of offensive opportunities for others. Nothing to touch on the Denver side. I don't think it changes things in any way, shape, or form. So if you've got any notes on the Denver side, let me know.
Nope, don't really. Just Michael Porter Jr. has been playing a bunch. KCP's playing a bunch. Stars are playing a ton. We got Christian Brown, who was kind of cut out a little bit. Kind of came back up because of some foul stuff. But it should be pretty tight. Commentary from Michael Porter Jr. saying they want to end this and not go back to Minnesota. So big spread, not as big actually. 10-point spread is the light spread of the night. So the home team's looking to close things out today.
Yep. All right, last game on the slate, Clippers and Phoenix on the Clippers side. No Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard, of course. They went to Marcus Morris in the starting lineup last game. Ty Lue referenced some defense versus player statistics that he'd done well against Phoenix in the past. I thought it made sense from a perspective of that spot for them. The the Suns have just decided to cover with Chris Paul basically, and just have Chris Paul just stay in the corner, and it's allowed Chris Paul to be active in terms of deflections and do a lot of off-ball stuff, but there's no threat of anyone punishing him there. And Marcus Morris at least allowed a threat of taking him down to the post and trying to get offense that way. So when they did that, I understood it. Marcus Morris shot 3 for 13 and shot the ball terribly in the game, and Clippers fans are disgusted with Marcus Morris. They have had a lot of success with Batum, so I understand if they wanted to go back in that route. But really, Marcus Morris is a path to creating some semblance of offense, which they're really missing. That's been the spot that looks like it's been a lever in terms of where it could move in the rotation. What are your expectations for how the Clippers start tonight?
Yeah, I kind of thought that Morris had a chance to start game 1. We had that commentary before the series started about bringing Morris back in the rotation and having a role. So it wasn't really too surprising to see that commentary after the game saying Ty Lue kind of wanted to just throw away the tape, more or less. It's not a lot of options here. I think they really like Terrence Mann off the bench. I think that they like to keep Bones Highland in that role. We've obviously seen huge minutes out of Russell Westbrook, Norman Powell. Got into foul trouble, cost him a couple minutes, picking up his 4th foul in the late third, and then his 5th and the 4th, early in the 4th. So Him and Westbrook are headed for huge roles here. They covered Gordon a lot better in Game 4, but the minutes should be pretty strong. Zubac's minutes got cut down. Last 16 minutes, he only had a 1 minute stint in a pretty tight game. So that was honestly not surprising. We were kind of expecting him to kind of get cut down there. But yeah, very unclear. I think Morris probably starts, but I think they can go away from him. Obviously, Man's been really impactful for defense. And the switch heavy scheme that they want to run. I don't think they would Galaxy brain it and pick anybody new in here. It would be Robert Covington. We saw him not play in the first half and then come in the second half, more or less taking some of Batum's minutes there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Batum goes away to give Covington a little bit more. Covington gets a lot of credit for defense, but he's just such a good team defender. I think that's what you really want to utilize if you're sending your defense in rotation, doubling Durant and all that stuff. So Covington kind of fits the bill there. So wouldn't be surprised to see Covington, make Batum go away here.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll note about Batum, he's really a great player to have on the floor when you have the other stars that create that soak up gravity, because he's very good at getting kind of a quick release off and whatnot. But if it's Norm and Russ there, and the approach from Phoenix is going to be like, yeah, you guys go ahead and try to drive and make contested shots at the rim all day long, and we're just going to stick to the shooters and try to make you beat us with twos, then Batum has nothing that he's doing offensively in terms of helping you in any way, shape, or form. Whereas Marcus Morris can at least potentially, like, if you get onto the switches, late shot clock, post up, different things like that. That's the reason I think they probably stay here, even though Marcus Morris shot the ball so poorly. They just need another offensive generator. And I would note that if Batum is back in the starting lineup, I think that's a little bit better for Zubats in terms of his minutes, simply because they need offense from somewhere. You can't rely on just Russ and Norman Powell just driving to the rim relentlessly over and over. You're going to need to try to generate offense on offensive rebounds and different things like that. So I think Morris or Zubats are a piece that they sort of need alongside these guys to be able to create a little bit more offense. And I think the thing that makes the most sense to me is Covington replacing Batum, getting into the smaller second unit late in the game, closing with trying to pressure the ball and try to create havoc, and then try to get on transition and bomb threes. And Batum doesn't really fit that. Zubats doesn't really fit that. So those are two guys I'm a little bit concerned about from that perspective. Okay, Phoenix side, we've had questionable tags on Cameron Payne throughout the first 4 games of the series. He has not been cleared to play in any of those games. He's listed probable today with low back soreness. We've seen as the series has evolved, which we expected once we lost Kawhi Leonard, that Josh Okogie would earn more and more of a role. His defensive prowess makes more sense against guards, driving guards. Torrey Craig more against physical, kind of mid-range, big wing type players. So it just sort of made sense that the direction of the series was moving towards Okogie. We have seen that. How does Cam Payne's potential return impact any of these bench minutes for Phoenix?
I think Shamet goes away. We saw Shamet picking up the non-Chris Paul minutes earlier in the series. He's still been kind of hanging around. His minutes have been dwindling here as Okogie's earned more. So I think Shamet goes away. I think Damian Lee's minutes may go away. Depends on how healthy Cam Payne is. Should note Cameron Payne's warmed up in each of the first 4 games and has not played. So maybe a pain tolerance thing. Maybe they're being careful. I've said this really all week. The playoffs have been a big back injury story here, right? So this is a tough read. So we're giving him the non-Chris Paul minutes. We've seen overlap at times. I just think it makes no sense to do that here. But maybe takes a teensy bit of upside off Chris Paul's minutes just because, they needed to play him and these other players aren't really trusted. But, yeah, Kogie's minutes I think are solid. He's made a really big impact defensively. Shout out to us for taking a plus 270 block line that he hit with some nice rim protection overall. He's guarded Westbrook a lot. Not that great. Westbrook is on heater. But, yeah, I think that it's going to be pretty close to a split with him and Craig and obviously the other 4 players. If the game's tight, which I don't think it's going to be, could play heavy minutes. And should note, Monty Williams says he doesn't care, basically. He says, hey, we'll rest up when the series is over.
Yeah, which makes all the sense in the world. Agree with you on CP3. I will note that Game 4 was his best game of the series by a wide margin.
No doubt.
Found his shot, found his mid-range shot, was more aggressive in taking that open corner 3 that's been available to him throughout the series. And I think will be important when we start talking about the next series if these 2 teams advance, Phoenix and Denver, because I think Chris Paul in that corner 3 is going to be a big part of the postseason discussion here, because I think that's how teams are going to guard Phoenix. They're basically going to be like, look, we're going to have to send help at Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and we're going to have to basically dare teams to our dare Phoenix to beat us with Chris Paul or Torrey Craig or Josh Okogie shooting. Like that's the better of all the evils to deal with. So it was important to me that he was not only making the mid-range shot again, but he was taking those corner threes a little bit more aggressively as well. All right. That will do it for this edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. As always, please support the people who are supporting us. This show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money running in addition to many formats of off-season NFL basketball contest. If you're playing NBA Pick'em, in-season subscribers can use our tools at ETR to compare ETR projections to their fantasy Pick'em games. And if you are not signed up for Underdog yet, you can use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. All right, behind the paywall today, myself and Mike Gallagher will try to keep the hot streak of flag plants going. I know there were a lot of screenshots in chat last night with the Brooke Lopez, Dennis Schroeder, Desmond Bain triple combo of flag plants from myself, Mike, and Gary. Me and Mike will be on the show tonight, breaking down the 3-game slate, the good chalk, the bad chalk, the contrarian pivots, and of course those flag plants. So check out the playoff sale. We have access on the site, weekly passes, monthly passes, or rest of playoff packages available for you. establishedrun.com/subscribe-MBA for more information. As always, if you're uninterested in giving us your hard-earned dollars, we do ask for your hard-earned clicks. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live. And of course, smash that like button and help feed that algorithm. You feed the algorithm, it helps feed our families. We keep feeding you the DFS injury information and analysis you need to make your DFS lineups, your spread bets, your prop bets. So feed that algorithm, smash that like button. Nom, 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 nom. We'll be back tomorrow, a special edition with Justin Fan for the 4-gamer. So check us out then tomorrow at 2:00. Take care, everybody.